Welcome to Fight the Good Fight Club, the podcast about the relentless pursuit of a life and relationships filled with purpose, love, joy, and peace. If you're ready to get real and dig deep, then you're ready for Fight the Good Fight Club.
Hey, you're here with Cynthia and
Marcel.
And we are talking about lesson number 8. We are talking about, just a reminder for anyone who's new, we take lessons or we base our shows on A Course in Miracles. Marcel's been reading it for 2 years. Well, you've gone through all the lessons once, going through it again.
Correct.
Yeah. And so today is lesson number 8. My mind is preoccupied with past thoughts. That's pretty deep and true, often.
Well, the interesting thing about this particular lesson, if you notice, it's number 8. If there are 365, this is one of the first few lessons.
Yeah.
And it's an extension off of a couple prior ones.
Yeah, it's a good foundational lesson.
It's very foundational. So, and we've talked about this before. Mm-hmm. One of the lessons was, I'm never upset for the reason I think. Mm-hmm. It's always, you're upset because of something
that
from
you
the
said?
past.
I'm sorry.
Like if I say I love you, you get upset because you think I'm lying. That is very present, but it's also past. That's your past, you see. Your mind's preoccupied with your past. When someone said they love you and it was a lie. So when I say it, it triggers that emotion.
You lie.
Too,
you don't love me. You hate me.
But it's...
Oh, my gosh.
I hate to love you.
Oh, I hate to love you too.
So,
okay.
But if you sit down, these lessons in the beginning, it took me a while to figure them out and to really grasp it. But it's true. And we've been down this road before and we've spoken about it. If you have an object in your house and you look at it, when you look at it, you think about where it came from, how you got it, but you don't see the object for what it is. You see the past in it, your past with it. You show someone, look at this object. And you can't just stop there. Let me tell you how I got it. We were traveling here. We couldn't afford it, so we put it on layaway or whatever. And you tell the whole story around the object.
Well, you assign emotion. You have an emotion attached to it, and then you create a story around the emotion.
Correct.
Right?
And I think that's why...
That's why you can't part. When you go to clean out a room or clean out, a woman cleans out her closet and she pulls everything out and she says, it should be easy, right? I'm going to throw away 50% of the stuff and I know I've got at least 50% of my closet is old stuff or stuff that doesn't fit. It's out of style. I don't like it. How many women have that dress or those shoes that they never, ever, never, ever wear, probably never, ever will wear because they don't fit, but they hope to fit into it, but they love it because of what? It was the dress that you wore on your first date. It was something that you saved up for years and years and years and years, and you bought it and you stuck it in your closet, and it's just, there's no reason to hold on to it. But there's a whole story around it. You pull it out, and then you put it back in.
You know, this is a joke, by the way, but that same dress, a man may look at it and go, yeah, but you don't fit in it anymore. He, ironically, is in the present.
Except the reality is that he will quickly become the past if he makes that statement.
That's right.
And she will not think about him again.
The other side of that. It's just a dress, right? Mm-hmm. But we're preoccupied with the past. And and it's neither good nor bad. It's just being aware of what your mind is doing and how you are letting your mind live in the past. And when I say you, your consciousness is, quote, the one presiding over your mind. Mm-hmm. And if your mind's doing all this, your consciousness is kind of observing it all. Mm-hmm. So the whole idea is to free your mind up of the past. Don't associate it. Just let it flow through like water and be in the present. So that's what these lessons are about. It's letting go. And again, the past inevitably is usually holding their grievances, things that have happened to you, things that were said to you, things that were done to you. And there are always people, you notice, you know. So you hold on to those, whatever the grievances are. Usually there's pain and suffering, harm done, hurt, violations, whatever they may be. They're there, and you hold on to them. And now, because it's at the core and foundation of your thoughts, those thoughts are projected outward. We were talking about this before. You're in a relationship, and then it ends. And this has happened 3 or 4 times. Now you're going to go, okay, my heart's ready to find love again. I'm ready to take that chance. What does that really mean? You're hoping that the next relationship's going to end up differently than the same 4, which all kind of began into the same way.
Because you're still the exact same person. Yeah.
So you're
doing it the same way over and over.
But in your mind, you're afraid of the past rearing its ugly head and playing out again. And there's always that first sign, oh my God, he's just like so-and-so. She's just like so-and-so.
He's just like my ex-husband. Yeah. I knew it. This is doing exactly the same thing. And then you're shocked. You're totally surprised. How can this be happening to me again? Because you are you. And you haven't resolved it.
I told you how not real long ago a girl called me in the middle of the night.
What?
Crying. I told you this. and
you answered the phone when a girl called you in the middle of the night?
We had dated for a little while.
What?
And no, baby, there's never been a real woman before you. The only real woman, okay? So,
oh, my God. Of course she's crying. She doesn't have you anymore.
Well, you're too kind. Actually, it's a blessing that she doesn't have me anymore, okay? So she was crying because she was going through another relationship, and I knew something was lurking on the background that was going to be dumped on me. She's like, we were doing so well, and he went home with my girlfriend. And I'm like, why did they do that? I don't know. And he was dancing. I'm like, I'm here, dance with me, but he was dancing with her. And there's more to the story. The bottom line was, and now it's like, I don't know what to do. I keep finding myself in this situation, like with you. Why did you? I said, I wouldn't say there's anything wrong with you. But
this is so sad.
She kept repeating the same thing over and over.
Yeah.
And I saw that repetition. I don't want to be a part of her repetition again. That was terrible. Lord. But I realized.
That's why you should not be answering the phone from ex-crazies.
I couldn't resist myself.
You have a current crazy. Why do you need to be talking to ex-crazies? Aren't your hands full with me? I know mine are full with you.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
So now this lesson, my mind is preoccupied with past thoughts. I mean, that's the central theme here.
But you know, to your point, though, I love this story, though. I mean, we're laughing and giggling or whatever, but it is the perfect example of what we're talking about. You're going along, you're in a relationship, you're thinking of past relationships or something that happened in the past, and you're calling someone, you're sitting down, you're talking to your friends, and you're saying, it happens always, right? Yeah. You know, just like my ex-husband or my ex-boyfriend, you know, Johnny, he's doing it too. Why does this keep happening to me?
Exactly.
Well, it keeps happening to you because
until you
have
why.
Not resolved the situation that continues to happen, that you keep inviting into your life because for some reason it's unresolved. Because if it were resolved and if it were something that you wouldn't want, you wouldn't keep inviting it into your life. What is it that you are trying to resolve? What is it that you're trying to learn or that you're trying to teach yourself that you don't realize that you're doing? I remember definitely when you and I started talking, you asked me, are you dating? And I said, absolutely not. I am not dating. And you said, why? I said, because I need to sit with myself for a while, figure out what it is that I invited into my life. This last relationship ended. You know, my ex-husband ended and whatever relationships I had before. And I kind of need to be by myself. I need to figure out who I am what I want, what I did, who was I in that relationship. And before I get into another relationship, I need to be clear with what it is that makes me happy and be happy on my own. And then, I can be healthy in a future relationship. And then you pursued and pursued and pursued and pursued. And of course, then I had to say yes.
That's your version. Any version is in your own mind. I asked you a question, and you don't remember what it was.
What was it?
You'd rather stick with your version, and I'll stick with the truth, okay?
Okay, what's the truth?
So we're going to get off on a tangent, because this isn't pertinent to this.
Okay.
So my mind is preoccupied with past thoughts. So why does this keep happening over and over and over again? And so the ultimate is to have the happiness within, because I think when you're going into another, quote, love relationship, you're hoping that that person will complete you, be your happiness, whereas you got to find that happiness within first. It's almost like the sun is trying to shine out of you, but there are clouds blocking it, and there are clouds that, for whatever reason, you're keeping there.
Yeah.
And you're not even seeing them, you're not discovering them. Until you ask the question, why does this keep happening? So that back to that girl that called me. So this is going to be funny. What really ended it, she says to me one night, start getting emotional. She goes, I'm trying to think about how to say this, but I love you. And that was the end for me. And so here's what I said. You don't love me. Why do you love me? Why? And she went all these, but they were all the wrong answers.
Were they all about her?
No, they were all this hope, all this promise. And I knew some of her history, and I said, well, what about this? And so I hate to say it, I helped remind her of her past. So because she had forgotten it, but she didn't realize her mind was preoccupied and didn't realize it. So it was this hope of starting all over again. That's why when I left, this other guy comes on, same thing. She probably told him, I love you. And he's like, I got to get the hell out of here. But the thing was, I had given her a book to see if she would read it, because I felt that this book would trigger something in her to maybe discover something inside of herself to find, because happiness comes within. It was my primary belief. It comes from within. Goes back to the whole purpose of this podcast, right? Still your mind, free your spirit, find peace within, right? And so it's hard to do that when you have all this garbage floating around that you don't know is there. So the sunlight's being blocked that's trying to shine outwards, and then it's because the past thoughts are the clouds blocking it. And you're going to carry that into the next relationship, and you're going to say, here's my cloud, to the next person, and then they can't see the sunlight coming out of you because you handed them your cloud of past thoughts and grievances and angers and resentments and hatreds or whatever they are. You got to just clear those out on your own so you don't project them and dump them onto the next person, into the next relationship.
All right.
So
okay, so I think we've kind of done a decent job of explaining what this lesson, what it's about. And when we come back from the break, we will sort of have some more concrete examples. I think last night at dinner, we did it differently. And I think that's a really cool example that we can share for people to sort of, for our listeners to sort of get more of an understanding of what we're talking about. All right, we'll be right back with lesson number 8.
Thanks for listening. If you're enjoying this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please subscribe and tell your friends. For more tips and ways to dig deep and get real, sign up for our newsletter, read blogs, and shop our merch at fightthegoodfightclub.com.
And we're back with Cynthia and Marcel, and we are talking about lesson number 8 out of A Course in Miracles. My mind is preoccupied with past thoughts. And now, a thought that came up for me when we were talking about this, pardon the pun, is that not all past thoughts, we're not saying, only stay in the present anytime that you go into the past. It's bad. It's not. Marcella and I were talking earlier about when I was in therapy or when I was in my workshops. We examined past things that were playing out over and over again in my life. So I think that revisiting the past to examine what it is that you are repeating that is not healthy or that brings up negative emotions. Because remember, in past episodes, we talked about how the emotions come up, we assign thoughts to it, and then we sort of live that out. So if thoughts are coming up and we're assigning emotions to it and we're examining that, we're trying to figure out what it is that's working for us or what it is that isn't working for us, then it's a good exercise. In my opinion, in my humble opinion, it's a good exercise because you're exploring, you're learning, you're in a learning mode. But if the thoughts are constantly coming up, because it's comfortable to be in fear or anger, right? Say there's an ex-husband, for example, and you're just constantly having thoughts of things that come up with an ex-husband, and it's just always coming up, and you have friends or family that are saying, you're always talking about Bill, or you're always talking about John, and it irritates you, but you're thinking about John because there's an unresolved issue, or maybe you didn't want that divorce, or maybe you feel guilt about it, or maybe you feel shame or anger, unresolved anger, then maybe examining that and with the purpose of moving beyond is a good thing.
Correct. And so you're trying to somehow get resolution with your own past. That's why you're preoccupied with it. It's like a problem needs fixing. You're not aware it does, but somewhere deep inside you you need to resolve it, but you don't know how, so it just keeps being pervasive in everything you do, and it keeps, quote, ruining whatever, relationship that you may have. And then the other person may not be into the personal growth area. And they may not even be able to recognize. And it's like, all right, on to the next one. But I do see things happening, you would think, as we get more mature, that we start learning this stuff. But I've seen people in their 80s who still have never even ventured onto the subject on why stuff happens or keeps occurring in their lives, and I can almost see it, right away. And it's interesting how people maybe in their 70s or 80s will always talk about their parents and what they did do or didn't do, and it's like they're 10 years old or 12 years old. It's still, they're preoccupied with the past, never resolved it, never grew up or whatever. And I think a big part of growing up is resolving your past, whatever may have happened to you. And also, along with all of this, because all the other stuff, you're blaming someone because your present is the way it is, because this happened in your past, this person did this person didn't do that. Those are all grievances. All this ties together, and it's just keeping you from being happy in this moment. The clouds are there, blocking the sunlight from shining out. You don't have the peace within, and so you're constantly moving forward with your past, but you're really going nowhere.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Let me give you an example of something that happened this weekend. We were at my parents' house. We were having dinner, and on Friday, we're all sitting. You had come back home, but my dad, my sister, and I were sitting outside, and we're chatting about stuff, and we're giggling and this and that, and it comes up the subject of my mother and why what happened when I was a kid. And longtime listeners would know that there was a 30-year gap. I left my parents' house, and it was I did not have a good childhood. And 30 years later, just recently, it's been over a year now, the Syntron Reconnection Tour is over, and we are now fully actualized and reconnected. But it comes up every once in a while. My father, who is 83, has questions. He ruminates and thinks about the past. And he asked me something about my mother, and I said, Dad, don't you remember my mother? My mother had a rageaholic issue. She was just really crazy. And he said, well, I don't, what happened? I don't know what happened. And I said, well, and I gave him an example. I said, well, remember when we traveled, we flew standby, and I remember when we were in London, my mother spent about 3 hours in the airport screaming and yelling and ranting and raving about God knows what. And he just looked at me and said every opportunity she had, she would rant and rave. And he said, yeah, that did happen. He goes, well, I don't know why that happened. I guess I was at work and I didn't do anything about it, or I couldn't do anything about it. But we talked about it, and then he looked at me after we kind of, he wanted to ask me. I guess, again, he kind of forgot why I wasn't around for 30 years, and I know that hurt him a lot. And he said, well, are we good now? I said, yeah, Dad, we're good now. It's all good. I don't know, the little man in her head that sort of told her to be mad all the time, he kind of moved out. He packed his bags and he left because she's good now. And he started laughing. I made a joke about it. And he started laughing, and I started laughing, and he said, yeah, we're good now. I said, yeah, I love you, Dad. We're good. He's like, okay. And he got up and he hugged me, and we went inside and started chatting. But that's kind of an example of how stuff from the past comes up, and it comes up. We've had some really great conversations, my parents and I, and we've moved beyond. I've forgiven. They asked me for forgiveness. I forgave, and we've moved on. And now we're in this place. And when we have a conversation, if it comes up, it doesn't bring up all this rage and all this anger and this need for me to have resolution. There's none of that, I mean, in that moment, am I feeling that feeling of that, how it was when I was a kid? Yeah, I can call up those feelings, and then I can also, and I learned this through my workshops and a lot of therapy and stuff, where you can call up the feelings, but I also am in a place where I can recognize that feelings come up. I can look at it, and I can say, okay, and put it back where it belongs and keep it moving. So feelings don't disappear from your life. Like anger and sadness and fear, they don't disappear. You don't quash them and put them in a box and put them away and they never come back. What we do is, and I had a beautiful therapist that said this to me one time. She said, what you do with those memories, they become part of the fiber of your life. And you picture like this quilt that you wrap yourself in. It's your life. All your memories are there. And you can look at it. It gets it becomes a part of the quilt of your life, but it doesn't overshadow everything else. It's just part of it. So with my dad and I sitting there, we just had a moment where he asked me a question. I told him. We talked about it for a minute. And he looked at me and I said, yeah, we're good. Like it's just something that we called up for a second. He wanted to look at it. So I brought it out and showed it to him. And then we put it on and we went on with our afternoon. And it was a moment where we could hug each other and say we loved each other and said it's all good now and we're happy now and it's all good. And I think that for me, that's always my goal. When a horrible situation happens or something that brings me a lot of pain and injury, my goal is to sort of get to that place where whatever needs resolution so that I can move on from that, I go to work. Like that's the work. That's the fight. I do, 5 rounds in the boxing ring or whatever I need to do so that I can move beyond that.
I think that's a good example because when he had asked, why'd you leave? And you brought up your mother and how she was in the past, you weren't angry. You weren't venomously spewing out the sentences. Remember when you were explaining because the anger is gone.
Yep.
The memory's there.
Yep.
But the anger is gone, and that's a good sign that
I can call it up though.
You can call it up
if I need to. Yes. I can, but I can also. The adult Cynthia, the 53-year-old Cynthia, adult today, is in control.
Yeah.
It's not. I'm not being controlled.
That's it.
By the little girl that was hurt.
And it's not affecting your current life, your current happiness, your past. And I think that's what this whole thing's about. This whole lesson is that if you're letting your past cloud up your future and your present, which always becomes the future.
And it actually serves as a really great protection. Because if I feel that feeling coming up, if that little girl starts to take control of my life and is showing me if something's going on and it's angry and I'm feeling and it's all that's up, I can look at it and recognize it and be like, oh, what's currently happening right now that I need to be vigilant about? Maybe if I were getting into a friendship, and here's a great example. When I'm meeting new people and people want to be my friend or they want to come into my circle and they want to go, I can recognize if that person is going to be that kind of person in my life, because I easily attract, those rageaholics, those crazies. Why? Because that's kind of in my being, so they'll come and they'll sniff around. But I recognize it and I'm like, yeah, you know what? I could be polite and, I can be at lunch or whatever with them, but I'm not going to bring them into my circle. I am not going to bring a toxic person into my everyday life to ruin my joy and my peace and my happiness. They could go be toxic over there. Go be toxic over there. I see you. I see who you are. Okay, no problem. You're good. You just go stay over there. I'm not going to call that into my life.
So bringing up the past, or if it comes up, if it invokes any negative thoughts and produces toxic feelings within yourself, there's something unresolved there. Mm-hmm. So I think that was a good example, because I know your past with your parents. I knew how you felt. Even when we first started dating several years ago, you still had a lot of that anger, because it was all about, wait till I write my book.
Yeah, it was. Now I'm still writing my book, but it's going to be a different book.
It's coming from a viewpoint of positivity rather than
anger and vengeance and whatever.
I wouldn't say you vented it all, because you can vent the rest of your life on an issue until you resolve that anger aside and figure out why it's there. But also, I hate to say it, you just become more spiritual and you let that stuff go. Yeah. And I think that's really what it's about, is not dumping those feelings into every relationship that you have. And a relationship can be friends, it can be family, it can be significant others, whatever, because you're constantly projecting the venom in you outwards.
Well, and what's different is
resolve that venom within yourself is what you have to do.
Yeah, and when you resolve that, you can live in the present. Because, think of all the amazing times that we have. Domino's. Yeah. Oh, my parents. Marcel's convinced that my parents are cheating.
Wait a second. So you're not in agreement?
I am in agreement.
Okay.
I just haven't caught them yet.
Oh, you haven't.
I totally believe my mother and father are cheating. Absolutely. My parents will win at all costs. But we won. We won and we won and we won. Now we're tied again. Okay. So Jesse is telling us that it's time for us to go on break. So when we come back, we'll continue the conversation on based on lesson number 8 of A Course in Miracles. My mind is preoccupied with past thoughts.
Thanks for listening. If you're enjoying this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please subscribe and tell your friends. For more tips and ways to dig deep and get real, sign up for our newsletter, read blogs, and shop our merch at fightthegoodfightclub.com.
And we are back with lesson number 8. My mind is preoccupied with past thoughts. And we've been having a discussion on how the feelings and the thoughts that come up from unresolved issues from the past can really affect our ability to have joyful, peaceful life. And Marcel, you said you had a really good example.
Yeah, if you think about it, past thoughts, we had talked about prior, thoughts come from feelings, but really what we're dealing here is past thoughts, but present feelings. The feelings are always the same, just as and the thoughts are always the same because the feelings are still the same. And usually, again, they're negative. Now, so I guess, I don't know what you want to call it, coping mechanism. I've done this myself. Rather than there's a past set of circumstances in a situation, maybe it's a past relationship, I tend to focus on the good memories. I guess that kind of, I don't know if it suppresses or represses all the negative ones, but I find myself laughing about the negative ones now, and I think that's a good sign of healing. But I think there are still some issues going on inside myself as well, where I do have thoughts about my past that are triggering still a little bit of, I guess I would say, sadness more than anything. And so, you work through that because I don't want to be sad. I want to choose to be happy in spite of whatever I feel I may need to make me happy. And that comes up, and I analyze them thoughts and become aware of it and just realize, hey, we're all on borrowed time anyway. So I don't want to dwell there. But if it's ruining current relationships, I think that's an alarm bell to work. I don't ever think that you can move forward if you're constantly dumping negative past into a current relationship. I mean, there's only so much someone can take, right? And so you need to have the knowledge and skill set, and that's what this is. It's acquiring the knowledge and developing the skills to cope and deal with your happiness. And if you're ruining it, or realize you can't if you realize someone else's energy is affecting your happiness, is it on them or on you?
Yeah, it's on you.
It's on you, right? Yeah. You can either learn how to deal with their energy, whatever they're dumping on you, learn how to deal with it, not let it bother you, and you continue to be happy. But if you just don't want to deal with that anymore, you just need. That's where Splitsville happens a lot of times. Hey, I just can't deal with whatever it is you're going through. I can't deal with it anymore. You need to resolve that in yourself, because I'm not going to deal with your stuff anymore. I have enough of my own to deal with. I personally have found myself in many situations where, and I'm not blaming anyone, but I found myself always in a defensive mode, dealing with someone else's stuff being projected on me, and that was my life, constantly defending myself against their stuff, and I wasn't even able to deal with my own, but that wasn't happy. A lot of times someone else, and maybe I have been in this boat too, where I'm happy with them dealing with my stuff, and that's my happiness, them dealing with my stuff. If you think about it, as crazy as that sounds, as long as you're dealing with someone else's stuff, they're happy. But what about your happiness? Are you happy dealing with their stuff constantly? And so I found myself in those boats, and I'm like, what does make me happy? Well, I don't surf anymore, I don't run anymore, I don't fish anymore. Those are the things I'm at. Why? Because it's taking all the energy I have to constantly, quote, make this person happy by quelling their fears, by, doing whatever it is that makes them happy,
Well, I think also, yes, I see what you're saying. And I think that taking personal responsibility also for being in our present, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. It's like, well, if I'm not exercising, running, surfing, doing all the things that I want to do, then I should is a terrible word. Then I need to take responsibility for the fact that I am choosing not to take the time to do that.
That's exactly right.
So people can do, and I think that's really important. People will say this all the time. I know I've said it in the past. I hear friends saying it. I can't do this because so-and-so is doing X, Y, and Z. Or because they don't allow me, or because I don't have the time. Because no, the reality is that if I am not doing the things that make me happy, I am 100% responsible for mine. Unless, of course, you have someone at home. I mean, if you have, for example, a handicapped someone at home that you're caring for, and you don't have the money to pay for someone to come, that's a totally different story. I'm talking about just basic, we live in a house, you do your stuff, I do my stuff. If I'm putting my wants, needs, and desires on someone else's lap or plate, then that's on me. That's not on them. That's totally on me to take responsibility to do. Then A, either I really don't want to do those things, or B, I'm using someone as a scapegoat. I mean, those are the options.
Absolutely. And, again, all this goes back to removing these clouds so the light in you can just shine outwards and be happy. Because true happiness is the light coming out of you and your happiness coming out of you.
Exactly.
It's still in your mind. And the way you still your mind is get rid of all this garbage, all these past thoughts, all these negativities, all these associations, anything that triggers, anger and negativity in you. And if you have that, okay, you figure out what's triggering it. And then if you don't resolve or somehow let it go, we had talked about if you took a lot of people I think have maybe walked down the road and maybe seen a coin and go to pick it up and somebody super glued it. And you're like, you can't. So a lot of times these emotions are super glued to our psyche or whatever it is. And we want to remove it, but we don't know how. It's like, I want to forgive. I don't know how. I really want to let this go, but I don't know how. And I think that right there is the number one skill to develop for true happiness, is to let go of these super glued coins, which are grievances that we can't seem to let go. And how do you do it? Is to, what I personally did was, whatever person or event or was caught, what I felt they were the responsible for my feeling this grievance, I would just do the opposite. Rather than hating them or whatever, I would send them the opposite. I hope you're okay. I don't wish harm on you, because that's not who I am. I don't hate you or whatever. That starts the process of letting things go. It's like, I always bring it up, my brother's murderer. I'm always sending him, good thoughts, loving thought, hope you're okay. If he comes up in my mind, that's what I send him. And it's been easier to deal with what he did than stuff that other people have done that arguably are of a lesser degree. But it's really interesting how that works. It's really not the act itself or the form of the grievance. A lot of times it's who committed the grievance or triggered the grievance or caused the grievance in you. But you can let it go in an instant if you can develop the proper skill set. You can nip it in the bud before it even grows roots. And so that's really me personally. What I want to develop that skill set, to where if I see some energy coming my way that I don't want, I can recognize and go, you know what, I don't want that. And not feel less of a human or less spiritual, that I don't want certain people in my life because I can see the energies that they have. Yeah. And I'm just like, you know what, just cut it off and move on. Just, there's a story that says, hey, turn around, wipe your feet 3 times and walk away and be done with it. Just like that. And so that's the skill set I want to. It sounds cold-hearted, but I've had enough. It's
actually spiritual.
I've had enough of this stuff, man. I don't want it anymore. I don't want to deal with someone else's crap. I want to resolve my own.
Letting negative energy into your life, or rather, dealing with something that is constantly causing grief. It basically setting yourself up as a martyr. Yeah. We used to say
that's exactly right.
We used to say there was I'm trying to remember, but when we did the workshops that I used to do every 6 weeks, I used to do personal development workshops, and a student, when they were talking about how they did something and they sounded like a martyr, one of the instructors would say, so where is the benefit of all the nail maintenance you're doing? And it's like, what are you talking about, nail maintenance? It's like, well, you're going up and you're checking to make sure that those nails, while you're holding up yourself up on the cross, you're up on the cross, and you're checking to make sure those nails are holding you up on that cross so you could be the martyr. Yeah? Is that working for you? How's that working for you? And they would just look at you like, but I'm such a good person. I'm so good. I've just, I let him treat me this way, or my children are torturing me. And it's always that kind of hand over your heart. You're like, but I have to. They're doing this, I have to be this for them. And it's like, there's nothing beneficial to anyone for you to be a martyr. It's pitiful. And meanwhile, listening to you constantly talk about the victimhood that you've created for yourself, it's not good for you. Nobody cares. Nobody wants to hear. Like, seriously, no. You know what I'm talking about? Do you know what I'm talking about?
I do. And, it brings up a thought, too. I remember reading something. Horrible. Judgment. Don't judge somebody on how they find their happiness or how they love their sadness.
How they love their sadness. It's fabulous.
So And then, because what's the ultimate? So there's a supposition here, a basic premise that it seems as if we know it all, which we don't.
Yeah.
But what I'm personally trying to do, irrespective of you or anything, I just want to have peace within myself and project it outward so that I can be a part of the solution and not the problem, whatever those are. And the garbage that I knew was in me, and I figured out why it was there, I'm constantly letting go. And I think, to me, a natural state of being is peace. And that's what I'm shooting for. And no matter what anyone else is thinking, saying, or doing to whatever they are doing, that's their whatever, coming from whatever the premise they have. I consciously wanted to be more aware and more conscious so I could be still, free my spirit, and find peace within, and have it such a bedrock foundation that no matter what comes my way, I would be, quote, bulletproof to it. No matter what bullets are fired at me, they can't harm me. No matter what I think, say, or do, or whatever I get caught up in, be aware of it, release myself, release others from my pain. Don't suck them or do anything to them to cause them pain, and just be at a constant state of awareness and peace. That really is my personal statement of being here on this earth, because I was thinking the other day, a friend of mine has terminal cancer. And I'm thinking she's been dealt a life sentence of not more than 6 months, but it's not looking good. And she looked at me and she goes, I don't need you to get emotional. I don't need you to get sad. I need you to be strong for me, Marcel. And if I need you, will you help? I said, I'll do anything that you feel that you need me to do for you. And I did. I sucked it up, and I'm thinking, we all are on borrowed time. She was just handed a medical death sentence, but we all have a sentence, and we don't know. And I thought that really, so I am benefiting from her situation, realizing that I was saying, learn from other people's experience. Her experience is she just was handed a death sentence, and I've known many people at this stage of my life who have been dealt those, but we all have one. It's just that sometimes a medical condition can speed it up, but we don't know when ours is. And I thought, all right, if I really want to leave something behind on this earth, I developed a skill set to try to be happy because of the experiences in this life, good or bad. No wiser saying, in my opinion, than this. This too shall pass. Whatever it is, good or bad, it shall pass, but we don't let it. We hold on to things. We hold on to grievances where they generate these past thoughts and our minds preoccupied with them. And we're not letting it pass. We're holding on to it and blocking so much of life trying to flow through us. If we could only still our minds and let stuff go, our spirits would become free, and we would find that peace, and life would just flow through, and we would welcome all experiences, good or bad, hateful or loving. And, this is an analogy. I'm not preaching any type of particular thought, but there's an allegory, I'll call it, where there was perfect peace and harmony in this one garden. And all of a sudden, the dude bit an apple, and all of a sudden, he had instant knowledge of good and evil. And what did he do? He blamed the chick. And who did she? Well, the chick blamed the snake. All this stuff. So to me, I'll call it an allegory, a tale. But I am personally trying to unbite the apple to where I'm in the perfect state of being, that garden.
Unbearable.
I've had enough of the results of that apple being bitten.
Yeah.
I've lived it. I'm sure I've caused some of it, but I'm going back I want to go back to that natural state of harmony that I believe we're an extension of. And in order to get back to that state, we got to let go of all those grievances.
Well, what I've learned from
you,
what I've learned from you in the lessons that we're doing and through my own experience as well is if we're in the present and our minds aren't in the negativity of the past, we are at peace.
That's it.
Like you said, good, bad, or indifferent.
Still the mind.
If you still your mind and you are looking at where you are right now through the filter of right now, as opposed to through the lens and filter of the past, then peace is right here, right now.
That's it. It's always there. We're just blocking it, and we got to remove the blockages.
Exactly. So we're getting close to the close. This is one of my favorite parts of the show. When we come back from the break, we're going to talk about, we're going to put all this down into little nuggets of what we can do, in our humble opinion, starting right now to continue the fight and win.
Fight the good fight.
That's right.
Thanks for listening. If you're enjoying this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please subscribe and tell your friends. For more tips and ways to dig deep and get real, sign up for our newsletter, read blogs, and shop our merch at fightthegoodfightclub.com.
And welcome back with Marcel and Cynthia, and we're talking about lesson number 8. My mind is preoccupied with past thoughts. And we've had a really full episode where we've talked about what this lesson means, what staying in the past and staying in the emotions and bringing those into present and not recognizing that we're in the past, and how it colors and affects and keeps us from experiencing peace and joy presently now in all of our relationships. So it's been a really, really good episode. And now, as we close, we love to leave some nuggets, things that we've pulled that are pulled from the lessons. And actually the nugget from this lesson is a great exercise because it helps us start to identify and what to do with those. Because many times we don't even realize. I know that there have been a couple of times in my life where I have been just embedded in this misery cloud. And I'm so grateful that Marcel has said to me, do you realize that every single day, you're talking about this? And it's a toxic situation that's been going on in my life, that it's just a toxic thing that I just keep allowing into my life. So it's the past that's playing, and it's playing itself out presently. And you've said to me, do you realize that this is going on? I am not going to participate in this toxicity anymore. If you want to continue it, you have at it all by yourself. I'm not going to live in this anymore. And then I've actually employed this practice right here to come into a realization and aha of the fact that this is happening, what the feelings are that are coming up, and then start to move beyond that, and it's really, really helped.
And I think that's the whole sum and substance. If you were trying to grow, right?
Yep.
Isn't that what personal growth, spiritual growth is all about?
Yep.
It's becoming who we really are.
Yeah.
And we've talked about this before. We're all merely actors on a stage. Shakespeare, I think, said that. Was it Shakespeare?
Yeah.
We're all actors on a stage, and the world's the stage.
Yeah.
And so we're playing roles, whatever, but deep down we're all the same. I believe we all come from the one life, so the life that we have is an extension of that. So all these lessons, they all tie together, and it's almost like if you're given a solid truth on how to cope and deal with this life, it would be still your mind.
Yeah, definitely.
What does that mean, though? Still what? So here's a good example on this. I'm preoccupied with my past thoughts, right? What are they? So picture your mind being like a cage with the ping pong balls or the lottery balls or whatever you want to call it rolling around, and each one's a thought. Grab onto a thought and write it down, get them out of your head, and then once they're all out, then your mind can be still because now you've moved them out of your head onto paper and you can see them. So that's one way to do it. And you were going to say? Yeah.
So the lesson number 8, what it says is, and I kind of want to just read what it says because it's a great way to do the exercise. Yeah. So it says that, like Marcel was just saying, you've got all of these thoughts. And search your mind for the usual minute. Sit for a minute in a quiet place where it's just you with your thoughts in the morning, in the evening, whenever you have a moment to sort of have that, for lack of another word, meditative time to sort of take stock of what your day looked like or what it's going to look like. So you take a minute or so and merely noting the thoughts you find there. And I'm reading from the lesson. Name each one by the central figure or theme it contains and pass on to the next. Introduce the practice period by saying, I seem to be thinking about blank. Then name each of your thoughts specifically. For example, I seem to be thinking about blank, name of a person, about blank, name of an object, about blank, name of an emotion. So once again, I seem to be thinking about name of a person, about name of an object, about name of an emotion.
And the idea is the irony is you're not really thinking. Those thoughts are there, and you're going to find out what your mind is preoccupied with, and it could be unbeknownst to you. And so,
and so on. And then concluding at the end of the mind searching period with, but my mind is preoccupied with past thoughts. So yeah, in doing this exercise, what you're doing is that you are becoming present with whatever voices are in your head or whatever it is that you're doing, whatever it is that's upsetting you. What you're doing is that you are giving it voice. You're plucking it out of your head. You're putting it down. You're looking at it. And this can be the beginning then of coming to reality of what it is that's occupying the space that's negative in your head. The feelings, the emotions, the thoughts, the people. They're becoming. You're making it real. You're looking at it.
Yeah.
So that now you can start to move it along.
Yeah, and again, to your point earlier, I knew someone that was really negative, and I may have mentioned this person in the past, but to make it quick, if something could go wrong, it would. Murphy's Law was the definition for her, no matter what it was. And one day she started telling me that, this person hasn't called me back. This person hasn't called me back. And then she'd name off, this one hasn't either. And one day, the negativity was so bad. One day I just said, you know what? I can't continue being in your life anymore, but more importantly, I can't continue to have you in my life. Because, and I almost said it, that this is why those people have ghosted you. And I said, look,
well, I would argue
never
that
happy.
That you
ever.
should say it.
I said, you're never, and then a few days went by, next phone call I got, happiness, kindness, and it's like, okay, when you emanate negativity, it's eventually going to drive positive people away. And then you may not have anybody negative around you to
you're
vent,
snuffing
misery,
out
love.
the light.
And so the confrontation there, I guess you call it a mini, what do you want to call it, intervention. I thought, I've had enough. I'm not dealing with it anymore. And if you want to be in my life, you suppress your negativity. I'm not here to fix you or whatever, but I'm not having this in my life anymore. I guess it was a boundary I had drawn.
Yeah, exactly. Well, absolutely. So I know that those times where I've drawn those boundaries with myself and with other people as well. I mean, when you draw them with other people, you run that risk that they may not be in your life anymore. They may, but honestly, do you want that negativity in your life? I've had people leave my life because I drew a boundary, and I got to tell you, I couldn't be happier. I miss the good times, but to be really honest, it wasn't worth it. Just not worth it. So I think that, like you said, drawing those boundaries with ourselves.
That's the key.
Is the key.
What you
and
will
that's
accept
what,
and
yes.
won't.
And drawing that boundary and saying, you know what, I just don't want to be unhappy anymore. And honestly, and I do this, wake up in the morning, it's like, am I happy? What did I do yesterday? How did I spend the predominance of my time? Was it in productive, healthy, good, feel good activity, mental activity, emotional activity? Or did I spend the predominance of my time unhappy, miserable, listening, the thoughts, were they unhappy in my mind? Was I feeling terrible? Am I exhausted? Do I not have the energy to get out of bed?
Exactly. And that old saying, relationship requires a lot of hard work, and we may have mentioned this. The work is on yourself.
Yeah.
That's the hard work defined. And
Yeah.
people are, relationship, you got to, what most people mean is it's a compromise. You got to compromise yourself to accommodate the marriage or relationship or whatever. You and I have agreed on this. That's not the right hard work. The right hard work is on yourself.
Exactly.
You work on yourself, your own issues, identify them, and have someone who's on the same page and go, you know what? There's an issue cropping up in you that I see in you, okay? And then just pointing it out and just leave it at that. Then if the other person's on the same page, they'll go, you know what? That person's right. I should work on that or whatever. And that we agreed that's what our relationship's about. I won't dump my issues on you. You don't dump yours on me. Help me if you see something going on in me. And, we don't have time now, but maybe we'll bring it up in the next podcast. Just last night, we found a couple of issues, and we addressed them, and no arguing, none of that stuff. Just in an adult way, we say, okay, you're right, and let me work on that. And I think it's because we've been having these podcasts, because we weren't there even before these podcasts began.
There's definitely been an evolution.
We have, butted heads, we've argued, angry, and all because of something within ourselves we were dumping on each other.
Yeah. So
we don't do that.
Yeah. Join us in the evolution. Definitely. Evolution is good. So thanks for listening to us today. We invite you to keep the conversation going. Visit us at fightthegoodfightclub.com. And until next episode, keep fighting the good fight club.
She's Cynthia and I'm Marcel. Namaste.
If you enjoy our podcast, we invite you to subscribe to Fight the Good Fight Club on YouTube. Hit the notification button and give us a thumbs up. Also, head over to fightthegoodfightclub.com and sign up for the newsletter, read blogs, and more. Thanks for listening.